Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for hanging around. Just thinking on the ideas for Tom, where the idea of that on service ducts would be fantastic, because that's always an area of concern. I'm never quite sure if being in this slot, you can see it's two things. Maybe they are saving the best to last, or actually it's the shittest one, so that the people that are hanging around, there's not as many hanging around. So anyway, it's great to be here. For a lad that went to Leeds Poly, God, there's some bloody clever people here today. So I feel a bit kind of humbled and blown away, to be honest. But just give a little background about us, about me. I'm an architect by profession, so I'll make my apologies straight away. Our business, I'm here sort of with a BIM Technologies hat, and BIM Technologies is really about all this clever stuff that's been discussed today, is how it's applied in a practical perspective. But the larger group, which sounds very grand, is SpaceGroup. And the idea of SpaceGroup is how we bring all that together. And the business is around making buildings smarter. And really, that comes from our original drive. We've been around 60 years as a business, as an architectural practice we started out. But from someone like me who started out on the drawing board many, many years ago, soon realised basically our industry, that's construction and design, really needed some support on the basis that, certainly from my point of view, I found it pretty crap, pretty awful, and it was kind of accepting that it was crap. And it's interesting and slightly unfortunate, the Grenfell Tower is probably one of the biggest scandals our country has ever seen, and is likely to turn out that. And who's at the centre of it all? The construction industry. And something spectacularly has gone wrong on that process, and there's lots of speculation, but how on earth can our industry allow that to happen? And maybe the answer to some of that, as well as the culture, might be we can maybe solve those sort of things in the future with some technology. And I think maybe that's one of the things that might encourage us all going forward. My story today, it sounded very grand about artificial intelligence, it's a slightly different angle. But the story today, I can't really claim much credit for the slides. It's somebody else's story, and I think James is in the audience somewhere. There he is. This presentation, we do something called BIM Show Live as a conference. And I must admit, the other thing I was going to say is, it's really embarrassing using the word BIM these days. It sounds so crap when you kind of see all these really clever people here. So apologies. Actually, when you've got a company called BIM Technologies in your group and BIM Store, it's tricky. We can't really change that. But I think things have moved on. That's a great demonstration of how things have moved forward. But the ant and deck of BIM are James Austin and a guy called Adam Ward. Adam is our technology director. James was loaned out to Autodesk, and he's been there for a few years. But they were the ant and deck of BIM. I guess I'm just kind of thinking, what does that make me? Because I'm kind of like the dad. With the grey hair, and possibly makes me Simon Cowell, I'm not quite sure. But our first BIM Show Live, the idea of BIM Show Live was a load of cool stuff going on. Why don't we share it? And the guys were all going across to Vegas to talk about this stuff. Why don't we kind of do it back in the UK? Started off in, not dissimilar to this, to be honest, the first one. It ended up growing to be bloody huge and ridiculous, and that's why we stopped it for a bit and came back last year. But first year was 2011. In 2012, James and Adam, being visionaries, set out what they thought the future would look like. So when we did BIM Show Live this year, the guys came back and said, actually, this is what we said, and this is what's happened. And actually what's fascinating today is that some of the things that seemed crazy then have been presented today and kind of even gone beyond that. The idea of a point cloud survey on a phone is crazy. And I remember when the guys came back from their first Vegas and they'd said, I think whatever the auditorium was, had been scanned, and how unbelievable it was. And this must be 6-7 years ago. And now we're doing this same thing on a phone. Mental. That kind of growth is incredible. Again, just to put the story in context, we kind of as a business started using Revit. It wasn't BIM. The word BIM hadn't started at that point. And it was basically the parametric aspects. We looked at a whole range of different products, and it was the parametric bits that got us. We chose Revit, and that was in about 2001, 2002, I think, something like that. By 2015, we delivered our first building using Revit. 2005, sorry. So you can kind of see, and then 2011, first BIM Show Live, 2012. So this is the pace of change. So actually in the first 5 years, between 2005 and 2010, progress, but not massive progress. And what really want to look at today is where what happened between 12 and 15, and then you can kind of start looking at the progress. And actually, we look at the kind of thing Levino were talking about in relation to sort of technology and hardware and Moore's law. You can kind of see the pace of change. So the kind of things we were talking about in 2012, the aerospace industry was fantastic. It was all about putting parts together, and this was kind of completely crazy thinking in our time. Actually, funny enough, when you go back and you start to challenge the truth about the aerospace, maybe it isn't as great that maybe we all thought it was at the time. But actually, we've caught up massively with that. And then we're talking about parts and cars and how those sort of things came together, and we're all very impressed by the automotive industry. And it was the movement from this sort of stuff. And this is not my hand, but I've been there, I've done that, and I always talk about razor blades and drafting tape and velos, and look around the room and there's sort of a blank expression on everyone who's very young, and all us old people going, yeah, I remember drawing boards and stuff like that. But the days of even remembering what that is, and anyone working in 2D are long gone. And I remember not so many years ago, sitting in it was an RIBA presentation with a whole load of sole practitioners saying, oh, this 3D stuff's great, but you still need to draw and you still need to use pencils. You get the young guys in our business now, they're just going to use 3D all the time. They wouldn't even dream about drawing things. They just have so many skills. And that's now. You just imagine where that's going to move to in the future. And the point made then was, back in 2012, in the construction industry, this was Elon Musk putting his rocket in space, and he was kind of just doing it in his back garden. It wasn't NASA anymore. It was this guy could do this himself. So what's the potential for construction, and where's that going in the future? So it was looking at simulation, and fantastic. Some of the things we've talked about simulation today. This crazy thing, augmented reality, this would never happen. This is on a fighter jet. This was 5 years ago. Bloody hell! If there's so much augmented reality and virtual reality, and it's been mentioned a million times today. It's just kind of like throwaway these days, and everyone's doing it. You can buy an Oculus for next to nothing. And then we're talking about the supply chain, and really we've seen massive improvements on how the supply chain come together, and it was all about open source. And this one's particularly for Rob Jackson. If he's in here today, I just had to go in for him. But we were talking about robotics, and if you think back, back to those sort of times, this was kind of all crazy stuff. But actually, the presentation earlier was kind of showing how the art of the possible. We're not, we've moved forward. That's becoming. It's not as ridiculous as we thought it was then. So timing is fantastic because reality. Where have we got to with reality capture? And I kind of start off with that amazing scan of an arena in Vegas somewhere. And actually, I don't need any slides here. We've gone from that to a Levino handheld device for 500 quid. So, but actually, in the practical, from BIM Technologies' point of view, from a practical point of view, it's incredibly useful. We started using it on 240 Blackfriars, but alignment of structure back sort of 5-6 years ago. We couldn't have done the job without it, or it would cause problems. This is a project on Old Oxford Street, on Commonwealth House. And actually, interesting enough, that handheld device would have been perfect there, because the thing we didn't pick up here is one of the most important things. That was a bit of a pain to go back. It was the service ducts and the tolerances on there. Great if the engineer just had that and he could just whip it out of his pocket and do that. So these things now are just kind of throwaway. What was interesting about this was the tolerances on the floor, because of very low ceiling height, so the camber of the floor is important. Again, throw it. This stuff now still blows my mind away. Photogrammetry, still can't get how on earth it works, but it's unbelievable. And actually, it's incredible the amount of construction sites are just using this, not really talking about it. And you kind of go on a construction site, and have you heard about photogrammetry? Oh yeah, we've been doing that. Engineers construction engineers are using this and not really going on about it, but still pretty bloody impressive stuff. And where we're going to get to with cities, and as we start to share that information, is incredible. And things like this. Actually, I remember, it's not that long ago, but I remember, James, you scanned our scooter quite a few years ago, our BIM store scooter, and it was this kind of stuff, and it just seemed like space age, but now it's there. And this is kind of a slide about how megapixels have gone, from the first digital camera on the left to where we are now. Progress is incredible. This is the hotel we designed, but this project started off 12 years ago. And it was done in 3D, but actually it was so long ago it started kind of in 2D CAD. But now the information of that finished project, online that's available through Street View, it's there now. It's not, you don't even need to have the model. It's all that sort of Street View information. You can kind of go and visit that site. You can walk around it. And that's just there now. It's online. It's real time. Everyone gets everywhere these days by using Street View and the implications. This is one of the things that's really exciting me now in our next big journey, and certainly from our clients. I see our position is we do a bit of research and development, quite a lot of research and development, but it's the practical application for our clients. So we talk to our clients and say, what are your problems? And then we're going to try and solve them rather than what we think the problems are. And certainly a lot of our clients at the moment are very interested in how you link people to buildings to cities. That's the big thing now, because they realise buildings are a bit static. And what we're keen to do is see how you actually link those in. How do you link me to this building? Through my, it's going to be through my phone of some sort, but that's the kind of linkages and that data, and we're just grabbing more and more data. And really, we've been talking about building information modelling, there's that term. But if you start linking, there's some really great stuff going on in smart cities. One of the challenges of smart cities, it's not linking itself together, but there's a whole load of cities with loads of data. If we can start to link that together, and then people in this room who are doing some really great stuff with data and buildings, if we just plug that in, that would be pretty cool. And 5 years time, I bet you are talking about this, and this is just kind of standard stuff. We're linked into networks. I was with someone from TfL this morning. They've got stacks of data, amazing amounts that you could just, and there's computing power. This is just another thing, just using, from an artificial intelligence point of view, you can actually kind of do now and put in, tell me where this building is and what it is, put that picture in, and it'll tell you what it is and where it is. And this is kind of coming from coding. And some of the things now you can put into Google still blow your mind. Here we are, here's Ant and Dec. So this is Ant and Dec, and basically we'll put this in the computer and basically can tell you what their age is. It doesn't tell you a little bit about them because that's probably X-rated actually. But this is kind of what scanning technology and photographs can do now moving forward. Automated construction, we've kind of touched a bit on this today. And actually now you sort of think, well, actually some of the things I've seen today, actually, bloody hell, this makes this look a bit kind of old-fashioned. But this is the potential, and I do think robotics is getting more and more realistic. The whole idea of drones and what they can do. This is not kind of crazy stuff, which some people might have seen the drone imagery of kind of bricks flying around. This is moving at a pace, and I don't think it'll be too long. And this is, I guess probably most people have seen this image. This is the first digitally printed building. And I think someone will get their head around this, and there'll be some investment, and we'll start to solve some of these challenges. And then looking at Leadenhall, if you kind of go and look at that aeroplane and all the parts, I think it's 80% of Leadenhall was off-site manufactured. So really, this is just a Boeing 747, but stuck on end and assembled together. We'll not talk about the bolts, but that's another story. So again, yeah, the robotics of that actually are quite realistic, and using generative design and things like that. And this is cool, using drones. And one of the things I was thinking about, that sort of the 3D printing, you just got to feel that drones is going to be the answer. Sort of managing drones and their movements and assemblies, just got to be somewhere. There's something in there that's going to come out the next few years about someone kind of putting buildings together that way, and just all the benefits from cost, from temporary works, from safety, all those sorts of things. And this, I think this is a Russian piece of kit, but that's a mental drone. That's going to carry all sorts of stuff and stick them on. But that's a real thing. Why can't we have some of them in construction? And this is this is for the directors of construction companies to fly around and visit our sites. You won't even need to get your feet dirty. This is your drone taxi that'll fly you around. Tell you what, stick one of those Levino phones on the front of there, and you've got the whole place scanned. Mental. BIM to field. Here we are. This was us doing some stuff a couple of years ago at Northumbria University. But this is so kind of, now you go, bloody hell, right? Okay, everyone's doing that. But some really, this technology has been made so accessible, and I think what's great about this is everyone's saying, right, how can I use it? What can I, what value can I get out of it? Augmented reality, again, it's kind of just run-of-the-mill now. We're kind of used to it. And then picking out objects and data. I can't help but feel that somewhere around this, the whole Grenfell Tower thing will be not solved, but prevented in the future around something around linking objects, data, some sort of RFID tag or something. People, now you're seeing the panic in so many organisations around the country. They've got no idea about their stock and the disgrace that's caused and the implications. But there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to track that data, information, who's been responsible, where's it come from, all that sort of things that we in this room have been talking about for quite a few years. People are going to say, actually, let's just put it into a real context. I understand that now. So obviously the next thing, what's the next 5 years and where could we be in the next 5 years? Well, actually, I could virtually stop there now because you've seen a lot of it today. Some really cool stuff. But you've seen these kind of slides before, and basically this is about the kind of pace of change in relation to artificial intelligence and where we're getting to. And it's, some of these things are pretty scary in relation to the reality and intelligence of computers. Recognise this. So we've seen this, the idea of printing a bridge, mental, but it's kind of nearly there, which is just fantastic. And then you start thinking about that. If you put that on the screen 5 years ago, people would have just thought it was ridiculous. But actually now, people think, actually, that probably is doable. And how could I use that in a building? That could be quite cool. This is something that Skanska are doing, and I just think this is awesome. Whilst I think HoloLens and Oculus has done some great stuff, I just think the whole, Vive and Oculus, I think HoloLens for the construction industry just has that augmentation between the real and the modelling side, has got loads of potential. And I think from a health and safety point of view, some of these, with all these sensors, these sensors are virtually, they're peanuts now. I was at a conference in France not so long ago, and there was sort of things the size of Scrabble pieces, and they had 15 years lifespan from the battery point of view, but putting those in hard hats. We looked at something like this a few years ago, and we had the concept, but you just didn't have the technology. You kind of had a big battery on your head and it just wouldn't work. But the idea of tracking people, and actually, funny enough, when you ask your clients, one of the things in London, you said, what are your biggest problems? Ask some of our clients. And a really surprising thing is what they came back with saying was resource. In London, one of the biggest issues is resource and resource churn. So say, for example, you've got a project with 150 plasterers on site. It's very important you try and keep those 150 plasterers on site for continuity and quality. If they get paid an extra £3 down the road, they're going to go down there. If you could track those people, understand and see the movements of your resource on site, that would have a big impact. Obviously, health and safety aspects of toolbox talks and all those sorts of things. So I do think this kind of technology is one of the areas where we're going to see massive move, that kind of field BIM sort of stuff. And I'm not going to play that because I'm not allowed. Did they get that? I think I got away with that. But basically what we're saying there is that you can overlay data and information in relation to objects. So you could kind of come into a space. One of the biggest challenges, you go into a plant room, nobody knows what anything is because it's just it's a pipe, or certainly that's an architect, because architects have a clue, it's just a big boiler thing. Everything's a boiler in a plant room. Clearly it can't be that case. But if you could look at something through your glasses that would actually tell you what it is, which is actually very, very possible, that technology is there now, you could actually do, you could kind of understand things, understand what your assets are. This is generative design. I think everyone's kind of got the head around generative design, but the idea of computers coming up with millions of ideas is fantastic. Some of the stuff that Zaha Hadid were doing is just amazing. I was fortunate enough, I literally came across, when I was in Venice last year, romancing my wife, I came across a Zaha exhibition. Funny enough, I went in and she didn't. She said, I'll skip this one. But when you went in there, some of the things that they'd come up with was just amazing. And there's just no way you could have come up with a lot of that stuff without computers. And I personally think they're absolutely beautiful. And I guess that the next stage for them is 3D printing, because some of these shapes, the contractor's got to kind of pull these together. It isn't straightforward. So that's the next thing. And then looking at things like Dynamo and creating these spaces, that again now, that kind of technology of using software has just come on leaps and bounds. And I just kind of help, back in the 90s, the late 90s, I was still using a rotary pen. And we've got to do with this sort of stuff, which is out the box, kind of putting things together. And this is sort of from Adam, our technology director. You know, it's not what telling the computer what to do, it's telling it what you want to achieve. And this is where the artificial intelligence has come from. And certainly our guys are really playing with this whole artificial intelligence thing at the moment and what can we do. So we've got quite a few research projects going on now to see what can actually come out of that. And actually it's really, basically we've got the data. We've built a stack of data in industry and it's growing faster and faster and faster. I think what we've cracked yet is what we're going to do with it, but that's coming, and that's coming fast. So if a computer designed a car radiator, it would look like this. Car radiators don't look like this at the moment, so this is what a computer would do. And then this is kind of progress, and then I think there was a mentioned before around some of the stuff that Google have been doing and have spun out, but the idea of that seed thing where everyone just piles their ideas into a pot, and I think in the past we've been very vertical and siloed as an industry. So you might have the planner, you might have the engineer, you might have the architect, you might have the builder, and this isn't my slide, right? This is, for any of you geeks out there, you'll find this is hilarious, but there you are. Yeah, that wasn't my slide, that's, you know, if you ever meet, he's hilarious, Adam, not. So what this is saying is that actually, again, in my day, very siloed, kind of information, and it literally was, there's a pile of drawings, I hand that to the engineer, you know, we all kind of hand down this line of siloed information. Really what we're getting now is, and this is construction as you're talking about, is kind of neural networks of information coming together, how it all interlinks, using the computers to do that, the power of computers. And I think this is kind of where we're getting to with construction and overlaying that information. So it ends up being a neural network linking information. This is where we really are heading now from some of the stuff. And just the Tesla, I don't know if anyone's, well, I guess some of you have been in a Tesla or driven a Tesla. I always say a Tesla is more iPad than it is car. And the amount of data that's capturing is incredible. And if we could have buildings that did this kind of thing and grab this amount of data, you know, all that data is catchable, and we've got, what's happened is our sensors are getting cheaper. That's been one of our restrictions. We can store the data. I think it's fairly straightforward to analyze it. It's just been grabbing the data has been our challenge. I think that's really becoming possible. So yeah, in the past we've had stacks of spreadsheets and data, which actually, certainly from an architect, means absolutely nothing to me. You know, I like pictures and lines and stuff like that. So I think this, what we're seeing now is that behind the scenes there will be a whole stack of data. And instead of us, you know, kind of telling something to do, here's a search bar, and you might say, you know, how many light fittings are going to break down in my building in the next 10 weeks? What is the temperature in my kitchen in February the 3rd? Is it going to be? When does my, you know, when does the boiler need replacing? They're the kind of questions. So it's going to be search engine. It's going to, and behind that, there's going to be artificial intelligence, and there's going to be lots of different algorithms powering this stuff. And fortunately now we're bringing a whole load of clever people into the industry that know this stuff, that do coding, that, you know, they're not skilled in, maybe he's using a rotary pen or a set square. The guy from Leeds Poly, that's what he could do. There's some far cleverer people coming into the industry now who understand that sort of stuff and will be able to analyze this data. And then ultimately it ends up, and this is my last slide, because this is an amazing space, and this has been designed generatively, and all of the elements are designed by computer. It's a auditorium in Hamburg, and this is kind of the art of the possible today. Well, probably about 3 years ago, because it's finished. So imagine come back in 5 years, what on earth we're going to be looking at, and if we made this pace of change. You know, 2005, SpaceGroup delivered the first building in Revit in Washington, Sunderland. We were chuffed with that. You know, 10 years later, 11 years, it's where we've got to. What's going to happen in the next 10 years? It's just unbelievable. Okay, and that's me. Thank you.